Self-awareness begins at home. Forgive your mother, change the world. We might have grand visions of a new society to replace the old, imagining new systems, economies, and structures. But without love, they will mean absolutely nothing. Whatever we imagine in our big vision to make this world a better place, to become real in the world, it's got to start with us. I wanted to share a reading from chapter 10 about how inner and outer transformation can be seamlessly integrated into the work of building community. It's also about the need for a supportive and nurturing group, whether it be religious, recovery, or other circles where we are held accountable to one another in our personal and collective journeys. Here's a short excerpt about how the monthly connections gatherings I shared in the book helped me to reconcile with my mother. There's a joke about the ultimate recovery group called Children of Parents. Unless there's some form of rampant abuse, most of us imagine our upbringing was normal. And when we hear about other families that seem more functional or even dysfunctional, we begin to see the missing pieces in our own family of origin. My mom was extremely critical throughout my childhood and into adulthood. It wasn't until I was an adult that I recognized that she was unhappy and frustrated that she hadn't pursued a career. My dad was a workaholic, away from home a lot, and instead of embracing motherhood, my mom carried it as a burden and took her frustration out on us kids. She was particularly critical of me, finding fault even when there was no fault to find. This persisted even into adulthood. I remember once showing her a logo I came up with, and she dismissed it out of hand without any specific critique or suggestions. I don't like it. This may seem trivial, but it was all too typical. When I lived in Reno, Nevada, my mom and dad lived in Monterey, California, and she and I would talk on the phone a few times a week. At the time, I was a single father raising my son, Isaac, who was then 12 or 13. She always had something negative to say when I reported on his progress. She felt free to criticize, disagree with how I raised him, and impose her opinion without asking permission. Interestingly, the connections gatherings brought this issue to my attention. We were discussing the virtues, and someone asked, "Is there any particular virtue you can focus on to work with your overly critical mother?" What came up was forgiveness. Thanks to my mother, and I had the opportunity to work on forgiveness every month for several years. I guess that makes me a slow learner. In those days, I would visit my parents a few times a year and stay for a week or two. Each visit was an opportunity to practice. First, because of my previous experiences and a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, I was able to pray for help to forgive my mother specifically. Then I intuitively figured out how to diffuse criticism and change the field. Whenever I became aware that my mom was being critical, I would walk over to her, hug her, and tell her how much I loved her. Perhaps it started as a tactic or strategy, but after many times, I realized that it changed my interior life as much as it changed hers. Conscious loving like this is not about anyone's feelings, but action and commitment. She simply could not put criticism into the field of acceptance I had created. Regarding her criticism of my child rearing, I learned to set clear and simple boundaries when I spoke with her on the phone. I responded calmly without anger or irritation when she began a critical rant. Mother, I would say, I'm calling to find out how you are doing and share what's happening in my life. Whenever I bring up Isaac, I notice you make critical comments. You do not have permission to do that. I didn't ask for your opinion about Isaac's behavior or how I am raising him. It's getting in the way of our relationship, which is precious to me. Please don't offer your opinion unless I ask you. I had to restate this several times during visits as well, but it worked. She stopped doing it and our relationship transformed. Looking back, I realized that had it not been for the monthly connections gathering, the support I received there, and the ongoing accountability to the group had engendered, my lifelong pattern would have continued, as would the mutual resentment. Coming together in a group created accountability for the changes I desired to make. Again, an ongoing recovery of the better part of myself with the help from God, the transcendent. In many cases, others naturally discovered that part of themselves as well. I also recognize that the support I gave her during her final years helped her let go of regrets and resentments, allowing her to forgive and be complete with her life. Such a blessing. As the end of her life grew near in 2019, I finally got an answer to the puzzling and heartbreaking question she kept asking me. Why am I still alive? Maybe there's still something for you to learn, I said. As I watched her release her fears, judgments, and resentments, I saw I was right. She needed to learn to forgive, to make peace with the world, to her loved ones, and herself. Shortly before my mother passed, at the age of 96, I was blessed to spend 2 weeks with her. Before I left to go back home, I told her, held her hands in mine, looked her in the eyes, and told her how much I loved her and what a wonderful time I had visiting with her. But I have been an ogre in my life, she told me. I told her, no, you are such a pleasant person, and I'm so happy you're my mother. We looked in each other's eyes, mutually recognizing that this was true, and our love became evident to both of us. Our hearts were opened at that moment, and our healing was complete. We finally connected on such a deep level that I knew that both of us had reached a profound acceptance and that she had answered the question that she kept asking me on prior occasions about why she was still alive. I was so grateful for this process that I wished it for everyone else. After she passed, I shared the story on Facebook by saying, I wanted to share some things I've learned, even with a challenging, difficult relationship and the potential for redemption and healing. Please consider this story as a call to action towards your loved ones and others with whom you might still have unresolved, unhealed places in your heart. You don't have to wait for them to take the first step. Do this not just for them, but for yourself in peace and joy. I love you all and give true thanks to each and every one of you. Thank you for letting me share. Please feel free to contact me with your thoughts and feelings. And I'm looking forward to our upcoming Symbiotic Culture Community meeting. Have a great rest of the week.